Alright, let's continue our lecture with part 2D, and we will focus about complex sentence structure. So what is complex sentence anyway? Well, a complex sentence is a sentence that contains at least one independent clause and at least one dependent clause, which connected by a subordinating conjunction or a relative pronoun. One way to get you from band 5 or band 6 to band 7 or 8 is to use complex sentence structure in your writing task 1. Let's have a look at the example. So here we say the subordinating conjunction, although, even though, we use them to express concession. For example, although oil consumption fell, coal usage continued to rise throughout the decade. So you can see one dependent clause and then one independent clause, right? Another one, whereas and while. We use them to express contrasting idea. For example, whereas urban populations grew rapidly, rural areas experienced a steady decline. Again, one DC and one IC. DC means dependent clause, IC I refer to independent clause. Right, another example. So we have these two relative pronoun or relative clause, which and that, right? For example, the figure reached 45%, which represented a significant increase from the previous year. So in this case, we see one independent clause followed by one dependent clause. Okay, next, after, before, when. So this is time clause or subordinator. For example, after reaching a peak in 2015, the number declines sharply over the following years. Again, we see one DC, a dependent clause, and one IC, independent clause here. Last but not least, because and since are being used to express reason. Again, these words should be used sparingly in your writing task 1. For example, since the data covers a 20 years period, past tense is appropriate throughout. Alright, you see one DC, one dependent clause, and one independent clause there. Alright, to sum up, a complex sentence is the combination of one independent clause and one dependent clause, which is connected by a subordinating conjunction or a relative pronoun. This is a tip for you. Use at least 2 to 3 complex sentences per task response. Task 1 response. Place the subordinate clause first for sentence variety. For example, although X happened, comma, Y occurred. Alright, so that should be it for today's lecture. I'll see you in the next lecture.